Ask Reddit by Stuff Bulldog. Which profession has the most etched up people in it? As a CPS worker, the investigation supervisors were all having affairs and one strangled the new hire in the office. Our judge got a DUI. Even HR was sleeping with the office manager. Hi, I'm a rep from Netflix. Could you tell me that story again? Maybe over the course of 3-5 seasons? Prison guards. I worked with a couple in the military, weird vibes from all of them. I think it has something to do with the weird power dynamic between them and hundreds of inmates. People that work in car dealerships. 4-5 years ago, my wife and I drove 2 hours to a dealership because she finally found the exact car she had been looking for online, and it was at this dealership. We called right before we left the house to make sure the car was still at the dealership, since we had to drive 2 hours to go look at it. We obviously wanted to make sure it was there before we made the trip. You already know what comes next. When we got there, the first guy we spoke to told us that the car had just now been sold, but he had some brand new models he'd love to show us. I basically went off on him and told him I'd never do business with them after that. It was a slimy way to get us in the door. It's hard telling how long that car had been sold. They just assumed we would buy something since we made the trip. Quite the opposite actually. The car business is full of degenerates. I was in college and interviewed to sell cars. The interviewer said, "You might feel bad the first time you get some old people on a fixed income and sell them a car you know they can't afford, but once you get that commission check you'll forget all about it." I got up and walked out. People I have met who are life coaches seem to be the most wackadoodle people ever. I've had 2 close friends in my life become life coaches. Calling them wackadoodle is close to the truth. They are. But there is more to it. They want to help people, but have no discerning skills outside of reading too much fat fitness self-help literature, and being charismatic. Also, are both fairly wealthy but didn't make the money themselves. I think their heart is in the right place but the wealth, crunchy granola bars, and pseudo-intellectualism many from self-help books melted their brains. Prison guards. Used to play video games with a guy from Texas that was a guard at some prison. He divorced his wife, who I had also become friends with, so that he could profess his love for me. I turned him down and he told me if I ever went to Texas and he found out he'd make sure I wouldn't leave the state. Honestly shocked no one has mentioned the music industry scene, and at every level. Drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence, sociopathy and narcissistic abuse, bullying, gatekeeping, rape, etc., especially at the local level and everyone's local music scene. Even the hipsters the musicians date and all their friends toxic AF. Yep. I used to play in bands for about a decade and did a decent amount of touring. All you said is correct. Drug addiction is rampant. Everyone sleeps till like 11 and works random ass odd jobs. Nobody ever shows up on time. And it's a giant ass kissing fest. Indie bands are incredibly annoying with how much they gas each other up to stay in good social circles. And then there's always an allegation that someone was being a creep or something, and then everyone treats that person like a pariah and acts like they were never friends. Love that everyone is just naming every job ever. Yeah, in this thread, people in the restaurant industry seem to develop substance abuses very frequently. I don't think the industry attracts those people, but rather the stress of the job combined with the availability of alcohol and other drugs create the perfect storm. What's sad to me is that working in the restaurant industry is usually one of the first jobs kids often have. I just remember in the 90s being made of at 16 by my co-workers that I didn't want to smoke pot or that I told them I had no interest in other drugs. Deleted. Definitely. They've probably got the most screwed up things going on behind the scenes. Healthcare. Some of the best providers I have ever met have very interesting life stories or fucked up pasts. High stress job check. Frequent verbal abuse check. Occasional physical abuse check. Long shifts frequently with little to no breaks check. If you don't come into this field fucked up, you may leave a little fucked up. Let's not even talk about COVID where people were dying constantly and families accused of us murdering their loved ones. Doctors. It is quite a journey, but it changes personalities a lot, and one day, you've become this cynical, rude person who is at high risk to ruin your personal life. They have one of the highest suicide rates, and yet, they work in multiple jobs, learn and study all their life. It is interesting, but they have to sacrifice a lot including their family time, and it affects everybody. Also, if you do SMTH wrong, you'll hear about it a lot, and quite rarely they'll say thank you. My brother-in-law is a GI doctor and his kids say he is never home and desperately waiting for retirement. I'm in medical and I'd like to nominate my field for having plenty of fucked up people in it. Most of us are jaded and have pretty dark humor. Not to mention the bullying and unhealthy competition. Chefs, 15 years as a chef, glad that's behind me. Mr. Kef is nothing like it. Most people strolling into work at 8 AM for a split shift, still drunk from the night before on 1 hour sleep. Sleeping in the dry store or back of the restaurant, punch-ups, coming back from your break to see your chef jacket had been soaked and hung in the freezer, being made to do shit jobs like separate 100s and 1000s into individual colors. Getting physically and verbally abused. It all just rolls of the back. Watching chefs do lines of coke off the prep bench before the rush. Some of the loosest people on the planet, most I still talk to are severe alcoholics at best. Some are lucky enough to transition to something else. It's quite a sad industry unfortunately. Obviously it isn't all like this. Don't count your cafes etc, that's not real chiffing. Man, the shit I've seen. Professional wrestling. I just watched Hulk Hogan interview on Theo Von's podcast and it's amazing how he's still alive and 90% of his friends are dead. Speaking of fucked up, Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon are two of the worst still around, though McMahon has Hulk beat by a mile, but Jesse Ventura had a great interview with Steve Austin about them both. But the way the wrestling industry is set up has allowed some really awful abuse and exploitation to go on, like the fabulous Moolah, Chris Benoit, or even Mike Quackenbush's Chikara promo. Real estate agents. Gotta be a massive cunt to do that job. https://www.youtube.com/watch?VGM2670048 My old roommate was a real estate agent. She was a cokehead, had a pattern of pursuing married men, talked crap about everyone around her, dead behind the eyes, abusive, controlling, and the list goes on. So glad that toxic women is no longer in my life. Advertising agencies, specifically senior level. CEOs are some serious sociopaths. A different breed. All very witty, very smart, super intuitive, charismatic AF, and a sociopathic lack of concern for humanity. Cocaine and good looks don't help. Think of a mix between Patrick Bateman and Don Draper. Less murder, and less creative. All megalomaniac. Edit, Patrick, not Jason. Haha, poor guy. Academia. Think of all the smart dysfunctional weirdos from your high school. Now picture them 40-80 years old, refuse to retire, and they can't be fired thanks to tenure. It's a nightmare. When I got my PhD, I took a job in industry. All the professors told me I was selling out and turning my back on science. Fuck that, I've spent the last 4 years watching you abuse each other. I want out of this asylum. Police seem to me to be stress cases and walking relationship disasters. The sad thing is my father was an officer for 33 years and did so much for our community it's hard to explain. He left in 2019 saying that things have changed and he didn't want to support them anymore. When my father, who is the best man I know, needed to step away, I knew things were irreparable. Tattooing. Lots of man children. Have a ton of friends in the industry. can confirm that, or aging alcoholics, or both. Corporate mid-level managers, they're either sadistic or fucking cowards. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about seers, but middle management consists largely of Satan's minions. Those who work for payday loan companies, taking the absolute most desperate people and then charging them insane interest because they have nowhere else to go to access the money they earned. I don't see any difference between them and loan sharks. You see payday loan spots all over, yet operating as a loan shark puts you in prison. The entire payday loan industry should be made illegal. How it is not considered usury is beyond me. Deleted. This is why I waited to finish school. I didn't feel comfortable handling others' issues if I couldn't handle my own. Finally got my master's at 37. Objectively, it's probably seers. There is something called a dark triad, https://en.m.wiki.org/wiki/dark_triad, which is a combination of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. One or more, or even all three, of these traits are common among highly successful people. Seers, sitting at the top of their field, overrepresent these qualities. I think there is a honorable mention for 46. Cops. I was one. Cops, hands down. Cops in my home county from the holding center straight up killed inmates on a regular basis, beating them to death, then has medical staff falsify medical records to say they died of a heart attack. Even though a third-party report said it was a recent beating, camera footage and intake records show before she got in she was mostly fine with zero heart conditions, and she only was beaten after cops took her into a camera dead zone where zero other inmates would be. The main cop used tens of thousands on taxpayer money and internal investigations and was deemed innocent. He bragged about killing her to my mom. He had my mom abuse me and almost put me in a position where she could have killed me. But no, let's ignore the months of text evidence that he revealed in killing that woman with my mom and told her in text to hurt me. Fuck cops. I know there are cops out there that want to do the right thing. Psychologist. The stories they hear sometimes have to mess with their head 100%. It also seems that a lot of them get into the profession because they have some issues themselves they're trying to figure out. Pornsters. They are definitely fucked. If by fucked up, you mean the profession fucks you up, social work, especially in settings that are perennially deadlocked into 1980 policy, homelessness, CPS DFPS, substance use, LGBTQ+, end of life and AMP, assisted living, etc. Others have said psychology, psychiatry, not to diminish the good work they do at all. But alongside witnessing mental health crises, only social work attempts to deal with the systemic issues at play, making those individual crises all the more unbearable when we fail to help. Of course, that really makes the hardest profession being a social work client. I'd rather burn out than switch places with a person experiencing homelessness or abuse 100% of the time. Sadly, even before the profession fucks you up, it seems to attract fucked up people. Been a RSW for 10 years and have been astounded by the number of colleagues I've had with serious mental health issues, substance abuse, major untreated trauma, etc., and enter the field thinking that it won't be an issue or that somehow they are better able to help people because they've been through it. I wish there was a way to dissuade people from becoming social workers before they have done work on their own healing. Veterinarians. Look up the drug abuse and suicide rates. I don't think that's because they're fucked up, though. It's because they have to see people treat their pets like objects. I assisted, more or less, with an autopsy early in my 911 career. The pathologist was a brilliant doctor and well known in the area. I was only supposed to observe, but the second I walked into the room and before he even asked me my name, he told me to put on some gloves and dig my hands in the body's chest to feel for the heart. The patient was a 17-year-old that had been killed by a drunk driver the night before, for your information. As I'm feeling, I realize he doesn't have gloves on and is chewing on a piece of bacon, what was left of his breakfast. There was Pink Floyd playing on a cassette player in the corner. He just smiled during the whole event with glee. Religious leaders. Nothing worse than a monster who thinks he's right with God. Malcolm Reynolds. Mental health. I worked in social services, and we had a ton of LMHCs and therapists working for the organization. All I can say is holy shit. I wouldn't want any of those lunatics poking around in my brain. The cosmetology industry. Cosmos, estheticians, nail techs, etc. Some of the most insane, mean, and vile people. Not to mention some of the abuse they have to go through as well from spa salon owners. Maybe it's not the worst, but the schools are vile. No one had a good cosmetology school experience. My mother-in-law is a makeup artist. Any person who is overly focused on looks is missing the main part of a person. When that person is fighting aging, convincing themselves that they still look and act 25, decide that the aging process is a choice they and others can reject, endlessly compare themselves and others, it's not a pretty combination. Hitmen. My wife is a hit woman. She hit on other men daily. It's our agents, they start fights literally for no reason. Lawyers. Deleted. Insurance. People who pride themselves on being able to cheat people who rightfully deserve benefits. Children's beauty pageant. Breeding ground for evil pedophiles. Reddit mods. The fuckers act like they get paid. I got perma-banned from our food because I said the mods contribute to a negative environment here. Then they proved my point. Slaughterhouses. Some of the workers are there because they don't have a lot of other options, but some are actively seeking out these jobs because they derive pleasure from abusing and killing creatures that are at their mercy, and it shows in the unnecessary cruelty they inflict on those animals every day. Wouldn't recommend watching hidden camera footage of what goes down in those joints. My brother wanted to become a slaughterer. Is that a word? My soul didn't allow him to. This same brother stopped talking to me entirely because I said I don't like God. Said I was disgusting and that he could never look at me nor even be in the same room as me ever again. I disinvited myself from family functions after that. Cartel member. Apparently pharmaceutical companies and the government agencies they are tied to. It's not enough to make insane profits, but also intentionally deceive doctors and patients. I'm still shocked by the opioid epidemic. The newest Ozempic craze is making me nervous. Why do people trust these organizations? Oh man, the Sackler family has a whole wing of hell reserved for them. I don't think anyone who can read trusts these organizations, but sometimes we need the meds to live. And sadly, not everyone reads.